Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Roundtable. This is where we talk about different topics with our colleagues and our friends, all travel related. On this show, we're going to delve into some funny topics, some actual serious topics that are quite, let's say, topical right now, and have a big announcement also as well. So I want to start by introducing Reid. If you haven't watched the program, the first two episodes, then Reid has his Insight tours. He has tours all over the world, but mostly not in Europe. And Reid wants to talk about travel perspectives, about how Americans and Europeans view individuals' rights differently. And I kind of think about this a lot. And as an expat, I think I'm almost to the point where I don't even really know how Americans think anymore because I haven't been there in so long. I kind of think how I used to think as an American and now how I think a little bit differently as a European. But Reid, why don't you take us into this topic for today?
All right. Good morning or afternoon or evening, whatever it is for you, wherever you are. Also, I want to introduce a little signature thing. Over the years, as I've been traveling, I've started collecting a coffee mug from every country that I travel to. So every time we gather together here on Roundtable, I'm going to be having a different country cup. This is my lovely Greece coffee cup. It says, "I love Greece" on this side. So you can look forward to seeing a new coffee cup every time we gather here. All right, travel perspective. That's really the subject that I want to talk about is how travel gives us a completely new perspective about everything in life, about our own lives, about the countries we're visiting. I think it's those of us who travel for a living have a special privilege of gaining a different perspective that's not really possible when you're in the United States all the time. And Andrew, your comments fed right into that, right? There is a difference. There is a difference to the way we look at things and think about things. And yours has start to become more of a Eurocentric one than an American-centric one. So that's really what I'm hoping to start in terms of a discussion with the group here, is this idea of the perspective we get from travel. Like I said, having been a professional, travel professional for 25 years, I've had my feet in two different worlds. A perfect example of that is when I'm abroad, I try to watch Al Jazeera's English news broadcast just to get a more, it's certainly not an objective perspective, but it's not Fox News and it's not MSNBC that are so polarized and so partisan at home these days. So I get to have that fresh perspective, a different perspective wherever I go. And we're just able to observe life in a different culture and people addressing problems in different ways and managing things in different ways. And I think that's one of the great values of travel. Couple of examples there. One of them is that I've over the years begun to identify or had confirmed for me that Americans are fearful. And by that, I mean, we're fearful people compared to other people. That's the perspective that I've gotten from travel. I've blogged about that. When the Guide Collective launches very soon, its website, my blog on culture of fear will be on there. And that's one of the examples of what I'm talking about. But the one I want to examine a little more closely is the fact that Europeans and Americans are completely different about how we look at individual rights, right? In Europe, individual rights are important, but they're not sacred. Whereas in America, individual rights are the most important thing, right? Our personal liberties, our individual rights, they trump everything else. And it's a very different way to look at life. In Europe, there is more of an emphasis on the needs of the community. And in America, it's always about the individual. Let me just throw out a couple of examples that I've been using for years on my tours. I'm probably the only one really old enough here to remember back in the 70s, the Black Forest started to die, right, from automobile emissions. And the German government moved very quickly to solve that problem. You know, they enacted all kinds of new regulations. The automobile companies had to abide by them, and boom, they within a decade they had reversed that, and they saved the Black Forest from destruction. Can you imagine if in the United States the government overnight said automobile manufacturers have to change A, B, C, and D? The caterwauling that would have exploded, you know, the NIMBY attitude, oh, we can't afford that. And it's all about, you can't tell me what to do, right? It's not, there is a less of a willingness to see what the community needs and more emphasis on the individual. What really started me thinking about this was I used to always fly into Amsterdam. And as you fly down into Schiphol Airport, you fly over many, many Dutch communities, and there's a clear delineation on the edge of the town. And over 23 years of flying into that airport, it never changed. My point being, you could see that they had genuinely strong zoning laws about where you could build buildings and what land needed to be preserved for agriculture, right? Agriculture is really big in the Netherlands. So here's this graphic example of the difference. If you flew over the same town anywhere in America for 23 years, you would see sprawl, 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 because we can't tell Americans what to do and what not to do when it comes to, you know, that sort of issue. So
Reid,
just
can I jump in here
Please.
for a sec?
Sure.
Yeah, because like, I mean, fortunately, I'm not in the States right now, but of course, I just see all the new stuff. And obviously, this has a lot to do with people wanting to wear masks or not wanting to wear masks, and how that's so politicized. Over here, I think, like, if you look, people who aren't, let's say, social distancing or aren't doing mask things, it's not really a political thing. Sometimes it's like, shit, I just want to go down to the, you know, to the discotheque or whatever, or I just want to go swimming with my friends, or I really don't want to cancel my 100-person wedding party or whatever. It's kind of like they're doing it. They're like, if they're breaking these laws, it's not because, oh, I want to like put out that I have these individual rights and you can't take that away, and I don't have to wear a mask and I'm not going to. It's more, I think it's more of just like, ah, shoot, like I want to have a fun time, I want to do something, but no one seems to back it up with this whole like, yeah, but it's my right not to wear a mask thing. And certainly those people who do, it's not really on political lines, because as most of you know, in Europe, there's so many different political parties. It's not like there's, chocolate and vanilla, which is like in America, it's like you get choice A or you get choice B. And that's kind of what most people rally around. So it is interesting that here, like you definitely don't see, if people act as similar as some Americans do, it's not for the same reasons, I would say.
Well, you've actually taken me right to my conclusion. The reason this was on my mind to choose as a topic is, look at the issue of masks, right? I mean, Europe has done much better with that. And if you expand your observations to Asian cultures, where being in lockstep with the community that's what's sacrosanct in their cultures, right? Is being part of the community, the family, the extended group. That's much more important than what any individual needs. And so you've got a place like Japan that's very, very densely populated, but they understood very early on that everybody needs to wear a mask, and their COVID graph has gone down to zero. And so this issue of Americans having this mythology about our individual rights is having a real effect on what's going on in our culture right now. Right now, it's the masks, and then I'm almost done. And then if when we do get a vaccination, there's this whole movement of non-vaxxers that don't want to take that because they don't want anybody telling them what to do. So I'm done. Jump in. Give me your perspective.
I just want to be the devil's advocate here a little bit, because having lived in a European/American household my whole life, and also spending a lot of time in Europe, I would say that while I absolutely think you're right, and right now we're getting real slapped by the individuality issue because nobody wants to wear a mask. Whereas even in Italy, where people really live to their own kind of, walk by their own beat, they're all in with taking care of each other in community and wearing the masks to take care of each other. All that's true. But I would say the one observation I've made after all of my years of travel around the world is that the thing that differentiates Americans is that individual liberty culture, but that also is an incredibly creative fire in all of us. I don't think there's another culture on this earth that is as creative and motivated and constantly making new things and coming up with new ideas. And we're just a boiling pot of individual creative approaches to things. And it does come with a cost. I mean, the cost of that is that, yeah, you're not the boss of me, you're not my mom kind of attitude. But on the other hand, I see a real benefit to our culture in the just incredible diversity of perspectives and the just incredible creativity that our country generates.
Yeah, Sarah, I'd have to agree with that. I just look, it's like every culture, every country, it's just like you got your pluses and minuses, and kind of depends like how, if you can take the certain minuses that come along with a place because the positives are so great. Certainly, and that would be a topic for another show, would be about kind of like self-motivation and DIY and all this stuff, initiative taking and things like that, that is definitely more ingrained in American culture than elsewhere. Although, like I always kind of say, like, for me, it's more of a native English type of like characteristic, because with a lot of Australians I know, like I found them to be fairly similar to Americans in the respect of like, let's kind of do our own thing, let's be more creative, but probably they don't take it to the extreme. So like the issues now of people not wearing masks because of the individual rights, they don't go as far as we do on things like that. But as my dad always said, you got to take the shit with the sugar. And so it's one of those things. I mean, there's some amazing things in Slovenia, the bureaucracy not being one of them, which will be a topic for another show, I think, quite soon. It's like, I got to put up with that because there's all these other things I really like here. And it's like anything, there's not a perfect person and not a perfect match and not a perfect culture, not a perfect country. And sometimes like with what's going on right now, it just seems like this is like the really downside to the whole individualism is key type of thing in the US.
I'm going to chime in here and just make a little bit of a distinction here between politics and culture in explaining these differences between, America and let's say Europe. We're giving the Italians a lot of credit for their handling of the COVID response, and their numbers are way down. They have a fraction of new cases now that they used to have at the peak of the pandemic for them. And so they're getting a lot of attention. There's a great article in the New York Times by Paul Krugman this past week, sort of wishing, America could have had a more Italian-like response. But, I don't know so much if it comes down to individualism or even politics, because even this week, Andrea Bocelli, for example, he came out this week and he showed up at a political party event and expressed some harsh criticism about the government lockdown in Italy, saying that it made him feel dehumanized and humiliated to be forced sort of to be confined to his house. And that was really unexpected, because he had also done this Easter Sunday performance in Milan, right, that was broadcast around the nation and was really part of a kind of unifying moment for rallying Italians around this cause. And then for him to come out now and express that opinion was sort of shocking for a lot of people. And maybe even in the last day or so, he's kind of walked those comments back a little bit. But in Italy, it's really hard to compare Italians politically, because they have so many distinct opinions about different topics that constantly are realigning with political parties of the moment. And so that, there isn't a one-party system or two-party system, sorry, as there is here. I would go so far as to say that specifically in Italy, and I suspect for many other European countries as well, that the COVID response really had more to do with culture than it did politics. Because of course the Italians also are notoriously, not nationalistic. They're not cohesive at all about any sort of, big national topics, except for soccer, famously. Except on this one thing,
You mean football,
with
right?
coronavirus, they were. And I think that the thing that explains it best to me is that the Italians have respect for their elders, and respect for the vulnerable. And that is something that compared to the US, I don't think we quite have that same sort of level of care and empathy for, for our seniors.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna wrap this up before we go, and then we'll get on to the next topic. And that was one point I want to bring up real quickly is, it's not just even respect for the elders. It's also just like, elders are so more integrated in Europe to people's families and extended families, which is why, I mean, where I live in Slovenia, it's like you hardly see any homeless people because people have these extended families to get help from or live with or whatever. So like that kind of also affects people because you're like, oh, yeah, like I actually see my grandma. I can see my grandma because she's like an hour away. So like, I don't want to do something that could cause her harm instead of like, oh, I see my grandma like every 5th Christmas or something like it is in the States. So that's what I want to kind of end with there. There's a lot of discussions that, and topics that we could take out of this and certainly delve into on another episode. I think we could all agree that would be a good thing. I want to go, let's go from a little heavy to a little lighter topic, travel screw-ups. Now, I'll just admit that, I'm still waiting for the day that I will show up to a hotel with my guests and like realize I booked the wrong dates and we don't have any rooms. Fortunately, that has not happened to me, knock on wood. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm exempt from this. Obviously, I'm exempt from this topic here because I haven't had any travel screw-ups. But I think Sarah might have a few that she'd like to discuss.
Well, I'm not going to discuss my screw-ups as a tour guide because I don't want y'all to lose faith in my abilities as a tour guide. There have been plenty of those, and that's maybe a different topic. But just in my own personal travels, there have been screw-ups, and some of them were maybe not the best in the moment, but in retrospect, they make great stories. So I always think that a trip without a screw-up is really not as delightful a story long-term as the trip that goes perfectly. But the one that came to mind immediately was when I was traveling in Eastern Europe with a group of friends, and actually friends that Andrew knows. Andrew and I have been friends for like 30 years. So these are people that we used to always travel in Eastern Europe with. And I was masterminding the first expedition into Slovenia. So a group of us had left Prague and we were heading into Slovenia. And I decided, I don't know why, I think we'd taken a late train and the train was due to arrive in Ljubljana at like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I thought, well, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Let's stop on the Hungarian border and just stay for the night. So I looked at a map because in the olden days, we didn't have phones to actually investigate destinations. I just looked on the map and there was a village on the Hungarian border. And I thought, oh, okay, we'll just stay in that village for the night. In the morning, we'll catch the next train into Ljubljana. And that way we actually can sleep in a bed for the night rather than sleeping on the train and then getting up and, arriving in a city in the middle of the night. So we all get off the train and we arrive in what is not a town, what is just a train station. And that's it. And there's a bar, we can see a bar, and that's pretty much it. And of course, I don't speak Hungarian. Oddly enough, one of my travel companions did speak some Hungarian because he's kind of an eclectic person that took like a summer course in Hungarian. So we were lucky enough that he was able to talk to the people in the station. There was like 1 or 2 people in the station. They sent us to the bar. We tried to talk to the bar and explain our situation, that a group of us had gotten off the train and we were stranded and we had no idea where to sleep. And after a while, eventually they understood and they let us sleep in the train conductor's lodge, which was the only other building at that place. It was a bar, it was the train station, and then it was like a hotel for Hungarian train conductors where they slept so they could head back to Budapest. So yeah, so we slept there. We went and slept there, and it was, I would say, the creepiest hotel I have ever, it wasn't a hotel, but it was the creepiest place I've ever slept. Just like, think about a gulag movie where there's like, you know, communist block housing and the buzzing fluorescent lights. And there was bathrooms down the hall, and the bathrooms were just slightly a cut above a pit toilet. And yeah, it was one of the, I think it was probably the worst accommodations I've ever slept in, maybe. But in the morning we got the train and we headed into Ljubljana, and it was fine. At the time, it seemed like one of the worst screw ups I've ever made, but 20, 30 years down the road, everybody that was involved in that incident still laughs about it. So was it a screw up? I'm going to give myself a pass on that one.
I think almost any screw up, unless it's like I actually missed my flight and I never got to go on whatever travel vacation I was going to go on, is always fun, because whatever crap happens to you then that you're like cursing yourself and mumbling and, you know, shaking your fists at, it's like it's gonna like be 10 times better as a story later on, because when everything goes perfect, you know, it's like the best travel stories are usually like, I met this really interesting person, or a bunch of weird stuff went wrong, but then it turned out beautifully, like it does so often in travel. Reid, would you have any little screw ups or things that went sideways on you?
There's no way he never has screwed up, I bet. Never, right?
That's what I hear. The
You
no screw up,
silver tongue flatterer, you, Sarah. Oh gosh, I'm not afraid to show my feet of clay. I can't think of any really disastrous moments, but I 15 or 18 years ago, I had a group in the Cinque Terre, and I'd been going in and out of there regularly for several seasons, multiple times. I didn't check the train schedule. I just, you know, I knew there was going to be an 8:37 train, and so I put that all up on the schedule for our departure day. And of course, as you all know, right, the tour members are always super nervous and early, and so they've all gone to the train station by the time I come out of the hotel and walk leisurely to the station. When I arrive on the platform, there's a train right there, and everybody's looking at me all wide-eyed, like, should we try to jump on this train? I said, no, there's another one in 10 minutes, you know. So the train doors close and off it goes. Nope, the train schedule had changed from summer to fall, as you all know that happens. And there was not going to be another train for 2 hours. So there we are on the platform with my whole group. And it's entirely on me. There's no way I can sort of deflect blame when I show up last on the platform and tell everybody, no, don't get on the train that's standing there. So that was a pretty tough moment as a guide, I have to say. I had a personal story that's not completely dissimilar from yours, Sarah. The first time I was in Europe in 1978, I was traveling with 3 other people. We'd been in Germany for 6 months. We were used to the German trains going everywhere 10 times a day on schedule. And we were traveling down to Greece on our rail passes. We got on a night train from Munich. And we had this brilliant idea that we wanted to get down and see the Adriatic coast, right? We wanted to zip down to Dubrovnik and Split and see that coastline, the Dalmatian coastline. And so we just, and by the way, you know, for you younger people watching this, like Sarah said, this is before smartphones and online schedules and stuff. Unless you were traveling with a 10-pound Thomas Cook train schedule book, you kind of had to wing it when it came to train connections. So we got off overnight on the train from Munich. We got off the train in Belgrade. No, sorry, Zagreb. And this was still Yugoslavia back in 1978. We got off the train in Zagreb, and it was a lot like you described, Sarah. There was a city there, but it was like grim in 1978. And we got off expecting that, you know, within half an hour, there would be a train down to the coast, and that we'd be able to go down to the coast and do all of our stuff and come back and catch the ongoing train at the end of the day. No, there was one train to the coast, and we had just missed it. And not only that, so we thought, okay, well, we'll just jump on the next train going on down to Athens. No, that's 14 hours away. So here we are stuck in Zagreb, Yugoslavia, which I understand has gotten to be quite nice now.
Oh, it's very, I would call it underrated, actually.
Yeah.
Definitely not. It's more, but let's say not as grim and black and white and monochromatic as it was back then.
But it was absolutely a Cold War stereotype in 1978. And we went and found a park. We hadn't slept well. I'm sleeping on the grass, and I wake up with a rifle in my face, you know, and there's some communist police, military, I don't know what, trying to talk to me in some Slavic language. And I got the message, right, to get off the grass. But anyway, I'll never forget that experience of just getting off a train naively thinking that, well, it's going to be just like Germany and Switzerland in terms of rail connections and our ability to do what we want to do. So those are my two for today. We can keep going on this.
Oh yeah, we could revisit this topic. Yeah, I think, you know, in some ways, like, it is actually harder now with all the technology and all the everything to like kind of do these kind of general screw ups, or, oh, I didn't know I needed a visa to come into your country or whatever. I mean, there's something to be kind of nostalgia about, of like, oh yeah, it was a little bit more like wild back then of whatever, but everyone's, you know, still alive here and survived. So I guess it didn't work out too badly. Reiner, do you have
I was just gonna say, I think that would be a great topic for us to explore more, is the difference between traveling in the 70s, 80s, 90s than it is now. And the other topic that just kind of comes to mind I'd love to discuss is, what was the Eastern Bloc like in the 90s? Because that is a really interesting topic. It was grim. Grim is a great word. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Rainer.
Well, I'll pick up on that because my travel screw up memory comes from the mid 90s. I was in college, and I ended up sleeping out in the middle of the desert somewhere in Arizona because Buddy and I had been hitchhiking from LA to the Grand Canyon, and we got a ride from these truckers. And the truckers, you know, halfway out into the desert, they said, well, you guys got any weed? And we were like, no, we don't. And so then they were like, maybe, you know, 10, 15 minutes later, they're like, well, we're turning off here. We're going south. You guys need to keep going, you know, east. So we'll drop you here. And it was out at this interchange, literally in the middle of the desert, nothing around. So they pull over, we jump out, and there we are on the interstate, and didn't get a ride for the rest of the day. So we ended up sleeping out in the middle of the desert. You know, coyotes howling, right? You can just imagine. We made it through, and the next morning we got a ride and off we went. But that seems like an ill-advised travel recommendation, to go hitchhiking to the Grand Canyon now in 2020, in the middle of the 1990s. After reading Jack Kerouac, it sounded like a fantastic idea, and it ended up being a great memory. But in general, I'll say this: since then, and since, you know, working leading tours, I'm a firm believer that there are no mistakes in travel, that there are just new opportunities. So some of the best travel experiences come when things go wrong. And so I almost kind of eagerly look forward to those moments when you have to improvise and be spontaneous, and then that's when the magic happens.
Well, speaking of, we're talking about some 90s things and all these experience we've had quite some time ago. One of the things that's on my mind, especially when I read old travel books, when countries were different or borders were different, or just history in travel of things that are like, wow, this would have been amazing, and then you realize it doesn't exist anymore. So I wanted to bring in for a topic here, and we'll start with Reiner in just a second. Is my idea is always like, shoot, if I had like I always say, if I had a time machine, I would never go in it, because I wouldn't want to go back and screw anything up and not be in the position where I am right now, except for 2020, which I probably might want to go back in time just to stock up on certain things. But I would like to go back in a time machine to go see some different things like that you just can't see anymore. And that's where we'll start the topic with that. And Reiner, if you have some thoughts, we'll take you back to where would you want to go, and what would you want to see that you can't actually see anymore or visit anymore.
Love the sound effects there. So much better than the sirens.
Just for you, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, so lots of thoughts come to mind here. I would love to have seen Pompeii, you know, before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. I would have loved to walk, you know, through the splendid streets and to see all those villas, temples, to see this sort of luxurious seaside city in ancient Roman times. Would have been it would have been quite something. I also would have loved to have seen Mount Vesuvius as a fully complete cone. Today when you look at the profile of the mountain, it has sort of its top half has been blown off. I understand, back then, before that eruption in the 1st century, it was a fully formed cone, so it would have been twice as high, hovering over the city of Pompeii. That would have been pretty spectacular. I would have loved to see the Ponte Vecchio in Florence before the Medici had the bridge rebuilt and added jeweler shops to it. I would have loved to see it as a working bridge, but also the butcher stalls where the butchers were butchering animals and throwing the detritus, over the edge of the bridge down into the river to poison the waters for the Pisans at the mouth of the Arno River. And I would have really loved to have traveled in 1851 to London during the World's Fair. In fact, all of the World's Fairs of the 1800s would have been spectacular sights to see. In London, in Hyde Park, 1851, there was the Crystal Palace. It's this incredible work of architecture built at the time of wrought iron and glass, the new materials of the industrial age. And the Crystal Palace was this huge gallery, the steel and glass gallery. It was 1,800 feet long. Consider that the largest cruise ships these days are about 1,000 feet long. So this is almost double the size of the biggest cruise ship you can imagine, 150 feet tall or something, and a fully formed, barrel vaulted, glass enclosed building. It was sort of the precursor for a lot of the gallerias that you see, in Milan and Naples, Paris, for example. And to be able to walk inside of this Crystal Palace, in the mid 1800s with these brand new cutting edge technology materials would have just been spectacular for a person at the time who was used to seeing architecture composed of bricks and stone masonry blocks and wood timber. So I kind of imagine it being like walking inside of a diamond, if you could imagine what that would be like. Would have loved to see that. Would have loved to have been in Chicago for the I think it was 93 World's Fair with the Ferris wheel. Would have loved to see Paris in 1889 with the Eiffel Tower for the first time. Just the spectacles of the 1800s World's Fairs. What do you?
All right, you got your dates all down there. I'll go around and get everyone else's picks for that. I just want to throw in. I think the biggest thing, unless we're only going back maybe 100 years, I think the biggest thing in going back in time would just be the smell. I think that would be the hardest thing to get over. I mean, that would be the time machine worked because, my God, it would just. I think I would be totally shockingly happy if it smelled semi-normal, but that would be my only kind of worry about going to some of these places. Although I guess maybe in Roman times they kind of figured that out a little bit. Reid, you got any place, any particular thing you would want to go see that you can't really see anymore?
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit more contemporary than Rainer was, things that have sort of disappeared off the traveler's map in our own lifetimes. I remember when I was about in my early 20s and starting to travel, hearing about Syria and Iraq and Iran. So I would say and those places are, I mean, Syria is clearly not a place you want to go right now. I think Iraq and Iran are not completely off limits, but it would be a challenge to one's mental toughness to travel to those places and feel safe. So I'm just thinking the parts of the Middle East in general that have some amazing things to see and do that I'm not really comfortable to go and see right now. So that was the first thing that I thought of. But just while Rainer was talking, I thought of a small specific thing, and this would, the time machine concept is really important because I would like to take my American sensibilities back with me. I would love to go back 800 years to when they just finished Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and that big square out front that you can stand at the back and you're 200 yards away and you see the entirety of the facade of Notre Dame. We all know as tour guides that the buildings used to come up to about 30 feet in front of Notre Dame, and that you could not see the entirety of the facade until you got right there. And then it was just boom, right in front of you. You can put yourself in that mindset by standing there and reminding yourself of that. But I would just like to have wandered through those medieval streets that would represent what is today that wide open square, and then boom, burst out and just see from very, very close up that facade of Notre Dame. So.
Oh. You know, one thing that it just kind of came to my mind, because I'm a big film guy, I would love to go Roman times, Colosseum, see a gladiator fight, and just sit there with my little DVD player, be like, all right, here's Gladiator, the movie. Like, let's see, like, let's check it out. Like, what did it get right? You know, what is, you know, is it, I'm guessing it would be far more chaotic and far more gruesome and far more like totally bizarre to sit through, you know, what you think is going on there than what you see in these movies. But I would kind of just like to see, like, you know, like I don't know if we can really imagine it unless we were there to see what kind of like spectacle it would have been. So that'd be one thing I'd like to check out. Sarah, I'm guessing you probably have something in Italy that you want to go see.
Well, a few different things, actually. I mean, if I were to get a time machine right now, I would immediately go to ancient Rome. That would be for sure be my first thing, because Rome is sort of where my passion for art and architecture started, and it's the thing that I've studied the longest. So ancient Rome would be number one. The time period would be tough to choose. I think maybe the end of the reign of Augustus, but then again, you miss a bunch of things from the time of Hadrian. So I might go at the end of the reign of Hadrian, which is 2nd century BC or AD. Like let's say 150 would have been a great time to go, because then you can see the accumulation of some of the best years of the Roman Empire. I don't think I would have wanted to be there at the end, like the 300s would have been kind of, So that would be fantastic. But I think I also on that list, one of the first things that came to mind for me also, like Rainer, was the World's Fair of 1889, because I talk a lot about that. I've read a lot of books, and it's such an interesting thing, because a lot of people don't know the great spectacle of the World's Fair of 1889 was actually the cowboy show from the United States. So it was cowboys and Indians. They brought all these people in because you had to bring in the great wonder from your country. And so the United States was represented by a Wild West show. And that's one of those interesting things I wish I would have been there to see, because what a funny little, like, it's a strange dichotomy. And then another thing that comes to mind immediately for me is that I have a great passion for Cambodia and for the Khmer culture. And it's one of the most impressive sights I've ever seen, to go to Angkor Wat and to all of the surrounding temples. But what I understand about it that most people don't, I think, know is that the Khmers were powerful and enormous in the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. And we just don't know a lot about them in the Western world. So I would love to see Angkor Wat at kind of the height, and not just Angkor Wat, but the whole Khmer civilization at about their height, which would have been the 1500s, around the time of the Italian Renaissance. That would have been interesting, because I can kind of imagine what life was like during the Italian Renaissance. We have a lot of paintings, we have a lot of descriptions, but the Khmer culture, we just don't have enough to really know. And I'd love that, just to understand a broader perspective of what world culture was like during a time period that I feel like I've studied pretty well. We have a blind spot in American culture to really just looking at European connections, but those Far East connections too are also fascinating. So those would be my probably top picks. Oh, and I'd also like to go back to about 1950, 60 and meet my my grandparents. I'd love to have met my dad's dad, and I'd love to have met Grandma Bobin, who was my mom's grandmother, who is like apparently legendarily one of the funnest women in our family. She was about 4'10". She drank a shot of whiskey before bed every night. She loved to make donuts, and she loved to ride roller coasters. So she's kind of like my ancestral spirit animal. So I'd love to go back and have met her.
So she was like 4'10", and then you somehow in that whatever 30, 40 year span, you got up to like 6'3" or something. So I'm not exactly sure how that worked out.
Yep, genetics.
Okay, we're gonna have a little breaking news, I think. Is it time for some breaking news? Can we break something? Sarah, is there anything newsworthy that we should be talking about right now for this episode?
Well, yes, my friend, there is something very exciting that all four of us are apprised of, and we want to introduce to everybody who's watching and everybody you know. So about a year ago, I kind of had an idea. I don't know if it came to me in a dream or where the idea came from, but it came to me that wouldn't it be great if we figured out a way to collaborate with all of these incredible people that we know, because not just myself, but all of us, we know so many interesting local guides, we know so many interesting other colleagues like ourselves, tour guides. Wouldn't it be amazing if we all worked together to create something to elevate the dialogue in travel? Because, you know, I think the internet is full of like top 10 lists of the top 10 best places to go, or this bucket list travel idea, which I think is so gross. How can we have conversations about travel that are more in depth and more nuanced? And how can we draw upon all of the people that we know to create a broader dialogue? You know, I have really appreciated having Adventures with Sarah, but Adventures with Sarah is limited because it's with Sarah. And I love the idea that I'm starting to draw all of you guys in, but what I wanted to do was to create something that wasn't just me, that was something that was all of us. So we don't talk about, you know, the individual in travel, we talk about all of our combined experiences and all of the different points of view that we have. So drawing on that idea, when the pandemic hit, I finally wrote down this idea and I pitched it to everybody. And that is the idea, we're calling it the Guide Collective. And we are going to be launching the Guide Collective this week, probably Monday. We're going to launch the website. And the idea is going to be that we have created a travel magazine that draws on the perspectives of about 20 different colleagues from different countries all over Europe and all over the world. We're going to expand it out to people who are in Africa and Asia, people that we know. We have contacts everywhere. So the eventual idea is that every month we'll have a theme. And then each of the members will write a piece, an article about that particular theme, so that we get completely different perspectives on a topic. So our first launch of an idea is bread. That's the topic that we were all given as a writing prompt. And everybody involved in the Guide Collective has produced a piece of writing just based on that. No other information. We didn't give them any other direction. Some people took it in personal story directions. Some people wrote about a kind of bread that they really like. And what we're going to do is every month have a different topic. September's subject is going to be democracy. And how do we from all of these different countries see democracy? And along with that, Andrew has taken on a fun little angle on the travel writing piece. Do you want to tell them about what you're coordinating?
Oh, yeah. So I have kind of my like things that fit in little categories, like I love food, obviously. So, you know, oh, hey, these are all these kind of dumpling shaped things that people should try they might not heard about. Oh, I'll do like my 5 favorite dumplings to get, or, you know, here's these scenic churches or beautiful drives or whatever, any kind of category for travel that I can lend my voice to, like, hey, don't miss out on these things, or here's something you should check out. And I always try to pick on some things that are not so obvious. And I'm going to allow everyone in the Guide Collective to kind of put their 2 cents in. So we might have 10 guides, each pick their like favorite craft beer from the country they're living in, things like that. Just there, it's more bite size, but it's a lot, but it is in depth, because I'm trying to shine light on a bunch of places and experiences and sites and food and things like that. That's kind of an easy to read thing, and that a lot of them will have links out to different to more information or things like that. So it's called GC Faves, Guide Collective Faves. That'll be up on the new site. One of the pieces actually that's going to be when we launch is on scenic drives. I put down some of my favorite scenic drives I've done, and that was going to kind of tie in with the time machine thing, because one of the places I went to that doesn't really exist anymore is this Crimea region, which Russia annexed. So if you're interested, hey, what was this place like before, like when I could still go there, you could find that and a whole host of other really interesting little kind of bite-sized things with different perspectives from all the different guides who are writing for this. So GC Faves, that's the section I'm kind of in charge of, let's say.
And Rainer, you are our web designer and you're coordinating all of the different aspects of this project together. Do you want to tell them about some of the other pieces of this puzzle that we're putting together?
Yeah, so I've been assembling the website, and we've got the magazine, as Sarah described. It's got various categories within it. That'll be interesting. We've got a GCTV page that is kind of a collection of all of the different video endeavors that members have been putting together over the years. We've got a virtual tour page. Guides are starting to put together virtual tour efforts. So there'll be information on those guides that are offering, a chance to connect with them through Zoom or Facebook Live, some sort of online medium like that allows them to, present different topics and then also engage in dialogue with people. So that's pretty cool. We've got a calendar of events. We've got some other stuff in there as well. And it's cool. It's going to be a kind of hub, a sort of network of different guides from all over the world. It'll be rich with content, and yeah, we're pretty excited about it. Check it out. It'll be pretty cool.
And Reid, you are one of our collaborating tour guides, and you're going to be putting your tours up there onto the website, right? So that people could know what dates and what kind of tours you're going to be offering. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that'll be part of the website, of course, is whatever endeavors all of our colleagues have going. I, of course, have imprint tours. So there'll be a a links page there for anybody who finds out about me, and they can link then to imprint tours and see what's going on. So yeah, all my tours are going to be listed. I've contributed quite a bit of content to the first edition, and looking forward to contributing in an ongoing basis.
Fantastic. Yeah, so that we have on board, other than the people you see here, Trish Feaster, the travel file, she is actually taking the day off of Guide Roundtable because she is putting the finishing touches, as she's our editor-in-chief. As I said, Rainer is our web designer. Charlie Rawson from England, she is our branding and marketing expert. I am the founder and the social media person and the herder of cats. Andrew is going to be in charge of faves as well as Guides Roundtable. And we have Lisa Anderson on board, who is one of our editors, and a whole host of other people that you probably know and you probably traveled with before. And at this point, there's about 20 of us. And I hope that it's going to continue to grow as it launches and people start to follow it. So on Monday, I'm going to send out on this page on Adventures with Sarah, all the contact information, and you can go and you can check out our first issue of Guide Collective magazine, along with some of the exclusive video. There's going to be a lot of content on there that's not going to be available on Adventures with Sarah. And eventually we will move this roundtable over to our new Facebook page, which will be exclusive to Guides Collective. So we'll probably do the roundtable one more time on Adventures with Sarah, and then we're going to move it over to the Guide Collective. So in this way, my hope is that all of you who are watching, there's about 35,000 of you that follow me, and I would love all 35,000 of you to go ahead and start following Guide Collective as well, because I've had so much fun over the past 3 or 4 months since this pandemic hit, introducing you through interviews and tours, all of my friends and people that I care about, because they are so interesting and they're all over the world, but they're all doing things, and I want you to know about those things. So you're going to learn about walking tours, you're going to learn about classes, you're going to learn about live tours once we're able to travel again. And I really hope in this way I can connect this community to the communities of all of my colleagues, and then they have their own communities and they can connect back. So it's a dialogue. I hope that's what this represents, is it's going to be expanding the dialogue and making a deeper conversation about what travel can be, the potential. So did I cover it all, you guys? Did I express it well?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well done.
I would say one more thing, and that's just that right now in the time of the pandemic, when none of us is really traveling much at all, the Guide Collective will be a great resource for all kinds of vicarious travel, and at least, stimulating your travel imagination in a vicarious way, in a virtual way.
Yeah, so we'll have virtual classes, virtual tours. We're kind of working on our programming for that. So starting in August, you'll be able to travel virtually with a whole host of people who have at least, most of us have formerly been Rick Steves tour guides. Some of us are new, that people that are not connected directly with Rick Steves, but you'll have the opportunity to travel vicariously with us. And just from the own comfort of your home, you can explore the world with us. So that's our goal. Any other thoughts or comments? Did I miss anything, you guys?
I will just say that as when Sarah told me about this idea and I saw all the contributions and who was on board, I was like, okay, it's not another blog with someone who just spent 32 hours in my country and wants to tell everyone like the 13 best things to do because they spent a whole frickin' day in Slovenia, which I can't stand. And this looks amazing because it's not that. It's something deeper, and it's from people who are living in different places. So it's not just another travel blog because, let's face it, there's a lot of content out there. And this is something we want to stand above. I mean, that's why we're doing shows like this, and Sarah's doing her kitchen shows and other things like that. It's we want this to be special for sure.
Right?
Yeah, I would add on top of that that to Andrew's point, there's a lot of experience in this group. I mean, we're talking professional travel experience, people who travel for a living, decades of travel experience. I mean, added across the whole group, it must be centuries of travel experience. So it's really, I hope it'll be kind of a travel authority or a go-to authority on recommendations. And yeah, a lot of people are asking, me, and I know all of my colleagues as well, when are you going to start, offering your own private tours? That's obviously, a big goal of ours, like as it has been with Reid. So there will be a page on the website that will list everybody's tour offerings. Many of them are still in the works because people are sort of rebuilding their business with post-pandemic ideas in mind, and that's really exciting. There's a lot of creativity that's coming out of that based on, all of these decades and centuries of experience that this group has. And so that's really exciting. Look for that to evolve in the coming months as people put together itineraries for 2021 and even 2022 at this point.
Yep. So this is the idea: is one voice is great, but consider that if you like following me, there are 20 of me. They just don't all have websites. So this is a way for us to combine all of our enthusiasm and our knowledge and our expertise. And I really think that it is a very exciting opportunity for us to kind of create something new using all of these incredible, experienced, intellectual thinkers. I mean, we have some just amazing people on board. So look forward to that, you guys. So that's going to be Monday. We're going to launch on Monday. Our initial episode, which is going to be bread, but also we'll have the faves and we'll have some other kinds of programming. And I think it's going to be really exciting. So also, if you follow any of the guides who are a part of the Guide Collective, they will be letting you know that on their Facebook pages. So once I put all that information out on Monday, please be sure to follow us on all of the social media platforms. We're going to have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then of course, subscribe to the blog once it's live. So there you go. That's the big surprise. That's what I've been working busily on with my friends, with all of these colleagues since April, I think we've been working together. So it's going to be a big deal.
Okay, right? So it's gonna be a huge deal. So but before we skedaddle out of here, let's go around. We'll start with Reid. Something that's actually going to be part of the new Guide Collective site, which Sarah and I mentioned, is the faves. So our topic for today's roundtable is, since we're all not traveling much the rest of this year, Reid, what is the food? What is the dish that you're going to miss because you're stuck at home and can't travel this year? What's that one thing you just wish you had like a table or a bowl full of to dive into right now?
Well, I think I'm probably the least foodie amongst everybody on the screen right now. And food is not that big a deal for me. But of course, food is a big part of travel. But I'm going to hedge a little bit. And instead of addressing a specific dish, I'm going to say, and Sarah will understand this, anything from Vietnam. Vietnam was the country of all that I visited that had the most diversity and the richness of flavors, and every day was a culinary adventure there. So I'm going to say, blanket wise, what I'm missing is any lunch, any dinner, any breakfast in Vietnam. And I think we're signing off at this point. So I'm going to say happy travels, everybody. Keep traveling and travel with intent.
Thank you. Rainer, what's your thing that you're gonna like go crazy on when you get there next year?
Oh man, what I'm thinking about right now, it's summertime, it's hot, and I am really missing a Sicilian granita. You know, just the intensity of the flavor is not something that you can replicate easily outside of Sicily. And boy, it's so cold and so energetic and flavorful that it just like goes right to your brain. I love it. So I'll be looking forward to one of those. Yeah, for me, you know, there's no mistakes in travel. There's just new opportunities.
Sarah?
That's a really tough one. The first thing that came to mind, Andrew, actually, granita was one of them, but I am going to hopefully be in Sicily within the next couple of months. But the one thing that I'm missing, Andrew, is having frico with you in Cividale.
Frico.
We love our frico.
Oh,
So
we must
I'm
make
freaking out.
sacrifices to the gods
Get
of
your
Frico.
frico on.
We
I'm
are gonna
freaking,
get,
man. Where's
yeah,
my
put
frico?
yeah. Ah, Frico. Everyone needs to learn about Frico, and they will when they read the guide collective and when they go on our Sarah and I's Veneto Slovenia tour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I have to wait until April for our Veneto and Slovenia tour, which, by the way, is on, you guys. That's in April, and that's definitely on Veneto and Slovenia.
Early May.
And you can
Early May.
early May. Oh, sorry,
Early May.
early May. And
So,
you can
yeah,
eat all the melted cheese that you want. We'll take you to have the frico. I do have a question from the viewers online. They want to know what time on Monday are we going to launch the Guide Collective? So what we'll do is we will launch it right after Monday morning coffee chat. So that's going to be at 11 o'clock. And hey, Rainer, I'm just going to put you on the spot here. Do you want to be my guest on Monday for Monday morning coffee chat? You're the only one I haven't had on yet.
Sure, let's do it.
All right.
What do I got going Monday? Monday's all right. Yeah, Monday should work.
So since he's our web designer, I think it's only right that he should be the one to go ahead and do the official launch of the Guide Collective on Monday at 11 a.m. That's when we're going to launch the website. We'll give you the address and we'll let you go explore there. So what I had to say about all this is andiamo. Let's go.
Let's do this. My pick is very similar to Sarah's because who doesn't love something with lots of melted cheese in it? So I'm going hachapuri, which is a Georgian cheese bread that just oddly enough, one of our contributors, Guide Collective Ben Curtis, wrote a nice piece on. So on Monday, if you're like hachapuri, what the hell's that? It's like, well, everyone who goes to Georgia knows what it is, and you could read about it too in the new Guide Collective. So with that, I will say, tell everyone, have fun storming the castle and have a great weekend. And we'll hopefully see everyone on our site, on our social media on Monday when we launch. Sound good?
Awesome.
All right, everyone. Take care. Peace out.
Bye.
Ciao.